The slam of the front door echoed like a gunshot in the quiet suburban street of Oakwood, Illinois. "You're no son of mine anymore. Get out and take your filthy lifestyle with you," my father bellowed from behind the wood, his voice cracking with rage that had been building for years. I stood there, 18 years old, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the chill of the autumn evening matching the ice forming in my chest. The words, "I love Gabriel and I'm moving to New York for acting," had finally been spoken, and the world I knew shattered in an instant. My hands trembled as I turned away from the only home I'd ever known, the porch light casting long shadows on the lawn where I'd played as a kid. Dad had always been strict, ex-military through and through, expecting me to follow in his footsteps with the family construction business or join the service. But when he found my journal filled with play scripts and the text messages to Gabriel, everything exploded. "This is not how I raised you," he had roared earlier in the living room, his face red as he tossed the notebook at my feet. Mom had stood silently in the corner, tears in her eyes but no words to defend me. She knew, I think, but the fear of losing everything kept her quiet. I could still hear the crack of his voice when he called me those names I never thought I'd hear from my own father. The bag felt heavier than it should have, packed with only clothes, my laptop, and the one photo of Gabriel and me from last summer at the lake. I walked down the driveway without looking back, the crunch of gravel under my sneakers the only sound besides my pounding heart. At the end of the street, I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person who had ever made me feel seen. "Gabriel," I said when he picked up, my voice breaking. "It's done. He knows. He threw me out." Gabriel's calm voice cut through the panic. "I'm already in the car. Meet me at the bus station in Springfield. We're going to New York tonight." Those words were the lifeline I needed. I hitched a ride with a neighbor who didn't ask questions and made it to the station just as the last bus was loading. Gabriel was waiting under the fluorescent lights, his tall frame wrapped in a hoodie, dark hair falling over his eyes the way it always did when he was worried. He pulled me into a tight hug right there in front of everyone, and for the first time that night I let myself cry. "We'll figure this out," he whispered against my hair. "You're not alone." The bus ride to New York was long and quiet, the Midwest fields giving way to city lights that blurred through my tears. I kept replaying the fight in my head, the way Dad's face twisted when he realized the plays I'd been writing weren't just stories but pieces of me. Gabriel sat beside me, his hand resting on mine under the blanket we shared, offering the steady presence I had come to rely on over the last year of stolen moments and secret dates. By the time the bus pulled into Port Authority at dawn, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but so had a strange new determination. We stepped out into the crisp October air of Manhattan, the skyscrapers rising like promises around us. Gabriel had saved enough from his part-time writing gigs to rent a tiny studio in Brooklyn for the first month. We hauled our bags up 4 flights of stairs and collapsed onto the air mattress on the floor. "This is it," I said, staring at the cracked ceiling. "No turning back." Gabriel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "No turning back, Hudson. This is our beginning." That first week was a blur of job applications, cheap pizza, and late-night talks about the future. I auditioned for anything that would take me, even background work in off-Broadway shows. Gabriel sent out short stories to literary magazines while waiting tables. Every rejection stung, reminding me of Dad's words, but every time I wanted to quit, Gabriel would remind me why we came. "You're talented," he'd say. "The world just hasn't seen it yet." One night, after a particularly brutal callback where the director had smirked at my small-town vibe, I sat on the fire escape staring at the city lights. Gabriel joined me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said softly. I told him everything, the fear that Dad was right, that I was throwing my life away for a dream and a love that society still whispered was wrong. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me closer. "Your father's fear isn't your truth. We're building something real here." His words didn't erase the pain, but they gave me the strength to keep going. By the end of the month, we had both landed small jobs, me ushering at a theater and Gabriel at a bookstore cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. I started writing again, late into the night while Gabriel slept, pouring the hurt and hope onto the page. The city noise outside became background music to our new life, and slowly the knot in my chest began to loosen. I still missed Mom's Sunday dinners and the familiar smell of Dad's workshop, but I was learning that family could look different. Gabriel became my family in every way that mattered. When the first snow fell over Brooklyn, we stood on the rooftop watching the flakes swirl around the skyline. "Happy?" he asked. I nodded, pulling him into a kiss that tasted like possibility. For the first time in a long time, yes. Yet even in those bright moments, a small voice in my head wondered if the past would ever truly let me go. Little did I know how soon that question would be tested again. The winter in New York hit harder than anything I had experienced back in Illinois. Wind whipped between the buildings like it had a personal grudge, and our tiny studio felt even smaller when the heat barely worked. But Gabriel and I made it ours, stringing fairy lights across the ceiling and taping my audition sides to the walls for practice. Every morning I woke to the smell of coffee he brewed on our hot plate, and every evening we shared whatever cheap takeout we could afford. The city was teaching me resilience in ways Dad never could. My usher job at the small theater in the village paid just enough for rent and ramen, but it gave me a front row seat to real acting. I watched seasoned performers deliver lines that made audiences lean forward, and I studied every gesture, every pause. During breaks I'd sneak into the back and run my own monologues in the mirror. Gabriel encouraged me relentlessly. "You've got the fire, Hudson. They'll see it." His own writing was starting to gain traction. A short story he submitted to a literary journal got accepted, and the $50 check felt like $1 million. We celebrated with a bottle of cheap wine on the fire escape, laughing until our sides hurt. Those nights kept me going when the rejections piled up. One afternoon I landed my first speaking role, a 2-line part in an indie play about lost youth. The director was gruff but fair, and when I nailed the read-through the cast actually applauded. I rushed home to tell Gabriel, who met me at the door with takeout from our favorite Thai place. "See? One step at a time," he said, pulling me into a hug that lingered longer than usual. But not everything was easy. Prejudice found us in unexpected places. Our landlord, a grizzled man from Queens, started making comments about roommates after he saw us holding hands once. At my theater job, a couple of the older crew members exchanged looks when I mentioned Gabriel's name. I tried to brush it off, but the whispers chipped away at the confidence I was building. One night, after a long shift, I came home frustrated and snapped at Gabriel over nothing. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe this city is too much. He didn't argue. Instead, he sat me down and listened while I poured out the fear that I was dragging him down with me. "I chose this life with you," he said quietly. "Every single day I choose it again." His steadiness calmed the storm inside me. We started attending a small support group for young LGBTQ creators in the East Village. There I met Marcus, a lighting designer who became a fast friend, and Lena, an aspiring playwright who reminded me of the sister I never had. Their stories of similar rejections made me feel less alone. Marcus even helped me prepare for bigger auditions, running lines until I could deliver them in my sleep. Spring arrived with warmer days and bigger opportunities. I booked a supporting role in a showcase that agents actually attended. Gabriel finished his first novel draft and sent it to publishers. We walked through Central Park holding hands without looking over our shoulders, something we could never do back home. The city was changing us, making us braver. Yet in quiet moments I still caught myself wondering what Mom was doing, if Dad ever spoke my name. Gabriel noticed and never pushed, just held my hand tighter. One weekend we took the train to Coney Island, riding the Ferris wheel as the sun set over the ocean. Up there, with the wind in our hair, Gabriel turned to me and said, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." I believed him with everything I had. The summer brought heat waves and my first real callback for an off-Broadway production. The audition room was intimidating, but I walked in remembering Gabriel's words and gave the performance of my life. When I got the part, even a small one, I called him immediately. His excitement on the other end of the line made every sacrifice worth it. We were building something real, brick by brick, in a city that didn't care who we loved as long as we kept moving forward. The internal voices of doubt still whispered sometimes, but Gabriel's love and our new friendships were drowning them out. I was starting to believe I could actually become the man I wanted to be. 3 years passed faster than I thought possible. The off-Broadway show ran for 6 months and led to another, then another. My name started appearing in small print in theater reviews, and agents began calling. Gabriel's novel found a publisher after dozens of rejections, and the advance allowed us to move into a slightly bigger apartment in Astoria with actual windows that let in sunlight. Life had settled into a rhythm of early mornings, late rehearsals, and quiet evenings where we cooked together and talked about everything and nothing. Yet success brought its own shadows. I landed a lead in a new play about a young man coming to terms with his identity, and the role hit too close to home. Night after night, I poured my own pain onto the stage, and audiences responded. Critics called my performance raw and authentic, but backstage the old voices returned. What if Dad saw a review? What if Mom was ashamed? Gabriel noticed the late nights when I couldn't sleep. "You're carrying them with you still," he said one morning over coffee. I nodded, admitting the truth. The identity crisis I thought I had left in Illinois had followed me, dressed now in stage makeup and applause. A misunderstanding nearly cracked us that year. Gabriel received an offer to join a writer's residency in California for 6 months. It was a huge opportunity, but it meant time apart. I panicked, accusing him of wanting to leave because my career was overshadowing his. The fight was ugly, words flying about sacrifice and resentment. He slept on the couch that night, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, terrified I was pushing away the one person who had never left. The next morning he made pancakes the way he always did when we needed to talk. "I turned it down," he said simply, "because I choose us." I broke down then, apologizing for letting fear control me. We spent the day walking the high line, holding hands and promising to communicate better. That moment taught me that love wasn't just romance. It was choosing each other even when it hurt. My career continued to climb. I booked a supporting role in a major production that transferred to Broadway. Opening night, with Gabriel in the front row, I felt something shift inside me. The applause wasn't just for the character. It was for the boy from Oakwood who had been told he was worthless. After the show, Gabriel waited backstage with flowers, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it," he whispered. We celebrated with our friends at a small bar, laughter echoing late into the night. Marcus and Lena were there, toasting to dreams realized. Yet even in joy, society reminded us we weren't safe everywhere. A tabloid ran a blind item about rising Broadway star and his male muse, and suddenly producers asked careful questions. I refused to hide, but the pressure weighed on me. Gabriel suggested we take a weekend trip upstate to clear our heads. In a cabin by the lake, we talked for hours about the future, about maybe one day adopting, about the family we were creating. His steady presence grounded me again. By the time we returned to the city, I felt stronger. The play ran for 8 months, and my name started appearing in bigger fonts. Gabriel's second book was accepted, and life felt full. But deep down I knew the past wasn't finished with me. A letter arrived one day from Mom, short and careful, saying Dad had been asking about me in passing. I didn't reply right away. Gabriel didn't push, just left the envelope on the table and waited until I was ready. I was learning that healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt invincible, others the old rejection cut fresh. Through it all, Gabriel remained my constant. His love the anchor that kept me from drifting back into doubt. We were growing, not just as individuals but as partners, ready for whatever came next. Success tasted sweet, but it also tested us in ways I never expected. 5 years into our New York life, I was offered a lead in a major Broadway revival. The salary was life-changing, and the reviews called my performance breakthrough. Suddenly invitations arrived to galas and industry parties. I brought Gabriel to everyone, proud to introduce him as my partner. But not everyone was welcoming. At one fundraiser, a producer pulled me aside and suggested I keep my personal life discreet for the sake of my career. The comment stung, reviving every fear Dad had planted years ago. I came home angry and distant. Gabriel tried to talk, but I shut down, burying myself in work. The misunderstanding grew when he overheard me telling an agent I needed to focus on my career right now. He thought I was ashamed of us. The argument that followed was one of our worst. "If you're still letting your father's voice live in your head, we have a problem," he said, hurt flashing in his eyes. I realized then how close I had come to pushing him away. I apologized, really apologized, and we spent the night talking through every buried fear. He forgave me, but the incident taught me I still had work to do on myself. Around that time, Gabriel faced his own challenge. He fell ill with a severe case of pneumonia that landed him in the hospital for a week. I sat by his bed every day, holding his hand and realizing how much I had taken his steady presence for granted. While he recovered, I turned down a lucrative film offer in Los Angeles to stay with him. The sacrifice felt right. When he was discharged, we took a quiet vacation in the Catskills, just the two of us. There, under the trees, we renewed our promise to each other. "No more hiding pieces of us," I said. He smiled and kissed me softly. Deal. Back in the city, my career soared. I won a small award for the Broadway role, and the speech I gave mentioned Gabriel by name. The standing ovation that followed felt like validation for every step we had taken. But success brought new pressures. Old friends from Illinois reached out on social media, some supportive, others judgmental. One night, I received a message from Mom saying Dad had seen an article about me and hadn't spoken for days. The news unsettled me more than I admitted. Gabriel noticed and suggested therapy. I resisted at first, but eventually agreed. The sessions helped me unpack the shame I still carried. I learned that forgiving myself was as important as forgiving my father. Our relationship deepened through the process. We started talking about the future more seriously, maybe buying a small house outside the city one day. Marcus and Lena became like family, hosting holidays when our biological families couldn't. One summer, we all rented a house upstate for a week, laughter filling the rooms. Those moments reminded me that chosen family could heal what blood had broken. Yet tension was building again. Gabriel received another residency offer, this time in London for 3 months. This time I encouraged him to take it, promising to visit. The separation tested us, but we grew stronger through video calls and handwritten letters. When he returned, we celebrated with a rooftop dinner under the stars. "We made it through," he said. I nodded, feeling more certain than ever that our love was the real dream I had been chasing. The years had taught me that growth wasn't about erasing the past but learning to carry it without letting it define me. I was becoming the man I always wanted to be, and Gabriel was right there beside me. 10 years had transformed us both. I was now a recognized playwright with 2 original productions running simultaneously on Broadway. Gabriel's books were bestsellers, his name known in literary circles across the country. We had bought a modest brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard big enough for weekend barbecues with friends. Life felt stable, almost normal. Then one rainy Tuesday, the phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in over a decade. Mom's voice trembled on the other end. "Hudson, it's your father. He's sick. Cancer. The doctors say it's advanced. He's been asking for you." The words knocked the air out of me. Gabriel found me sitting on the kitchen floor, still holding the phone. He didn't ask questions, just sat beside me and waited until I could speak. That night we talked for hours. I wrestled with anger, pity, and the small boy inside me who still wanted his father's approval. Gabriel listened, offering no advice, only presence. The next morning I booked a flight to Illinois. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, tubes and machines surrounding the man who once towered over me. His eyes widened when I walked in. "Hudson," he whispered, voice weak. "You came. We didn't hug." I sat in the chair by the bed while he struggled to find words. He told me about the business failing, the loneliness after Mom moved out, The nights he lay awake wondering where he went wrong. "I was wrong," he said finally, tears in his eyes. "About you. About everything." The apology I had waited 10 years for landed differently than I expected. Part of me wanted to scream, another part wanted to comfort him. Gabriel had flown in the next day and waited outside, giving us space. When I stepped into the hallway, he pulled me into his arms without a word. Over the following week, I visited daily. Dad asked about my life, my career, about Gabriel. I showed him photos, told him stories. He listened, really listened, something he had never done before. One afternoon, he reached for my hand. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for it anyway. I'm begging for mercy, son." The word son cracked something open inside me. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I told him about the years of struggle, the nights I almost gave up, the love that had saved me. He cried then, silent tears that said more than words ever could. Gabriel and I stayed in a nearby hotel. Evenings we walked the same streets I had fled as a teenager, but now hand in hand without fear. Gabriel reminded me that helping didn't mean forgetting. "You get to decide the boundaries," he said. I decided to pay for Dad's treatment and arrange home care after discharge. But I made it clear the relationship would be on my terms. No demands, no judgments. Mom visited one day, hugging me tightly and whispering thanks. Watching my parents in the same room for the first time in years felt surreal. Dad's health improved slightly with treatment, but the doctors warned it was only temporary. In quiet moments, he shared regrets about the military life that taught him strength meant never showing weakness. I shared how Gabriel taught me strength could look like vulnerability. Slowly, carefully, something like understanding grew between us. Yet every night back at the hotel, I processed with Gabriel, who held me through the waves of emotion. His steady love reminded me why I had survived. The trip stretched into 2 weeks. Before we flew home, Dad asked to meet Gabriel. The three of us sat in the hospital cafeteria, awkward at first but softening as Gabriel shared stories about our life in New York. Dad listened, nodding occasionally. When we left, he shook Gabriel's hand. "Take care of my son," he said. The words carried weight I never thought I'd hear. On the plane home, I rested my head on Gabriel's shoulder. "Thank you for being here." He kissed my forehead. "Always." The confrontation had stirred up everything I thought I had buried, but it also brought a strange peace. I had faced the past and chosen my future. Now I had to decide what mercy really looked like going forward. The brownstone in Brooklyn welcomed us back with familiar creaks and the scent of the lavender candles Gabriel loved. Life resumed its rhythm, but everything felt different. Dad's treatment continued with money I wired each month. We spoke on the phone twice a week, short conversations that slowly grew longer. He asked about my latest play. I asked about his days. Gabriel never pushed, but his quiet support made the bridge I was building feel possible. One evening, Dad called while I was cooking dinner. His voice was weaker than usual. "I need to say something before it's too late," he said. I was scared, Hudson. Scared of what I didn't understand. I thought if I pushed hard enough you'd become the man I pictured. Instead I lost you. I'm sorry. Truly. The apology landed softly this time. I told him I was still working on forgiveness, but that I was glad he was fighting. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window staring at the backyard where Gabriel was planting tomatoes. He looked up and smiled, the same smile that had saved me 1,000 times. Later that night we sat on the couch, his head in my lap while I read lines from my new script aloud. "You're different since Illinois," he observed gently. "Stronger." I nodded. I think I finally let go of needing his approval to feel whole. The months that followed brought more changes. Dad's condition stabilized enough for him to come visit New York for a week. We showed him the theater district, took him to see my play. He sat in the audience and clapped louder than anyone when the curtain fell. Afterward, backstage, he hugged me for the first time in over a decade. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice thick. The words healed something deep. Gabriel and I hosted a small dinner with Marcus and Lena. Dad listened to their stories, asked questions, even laughed at Marcus's jokes. Watching him try meant more than I could express. When he returned to Illinois, he left a letter on our kitchen table. It detailed every regret, every moment he wished he could redo. I read it aloud to Gabriel on the fire escape under the same stars we had watched years ago. Tears fell as I finished. Gabriel wiped them away. "You did good, Hudson. You gave him mercy without losing yourself." Life continued its gentle forward motion. I finished my new play about forgiveness across generations. Gabriel's latest book hit the bestseller list. We adopted a rescue dog and talked seriously about fostering kids one day. The family we had chosen and the one I was slowly rebuilding felt complete in their own ways. One crisp autumn morning, exactly 11 years after that slammed door in Oakwood, I received a text from Mom. Dad was in hospice. Gabriel drove us to Illinois without hesitation. We sat with Dad through his final days. He held my hand and whispered, "Thank you for letting me back in." When he passed peacefully 2 nights later, I felt grief and relief in equal measure. At the funeral, I spoke about the man who taught me strength and the man who taught me love. Gabriel stood beside me, solid as ever. Back home in Brooklyn, I placed Dad's old military watch on my desk as a reminder. The past no longer haunted me. It had become part of the story that made me who I was. Gabriel and I celebrated our 12th anniversary with a quiet dinner on the rooftop. He raised a glass. To the dreams we chased and the life we built. I clinked my glass to his. To us. Looking at the city lights stretching endlessly, I realized the journey had been worth every tear, every doubt, every hard choice. True family wasn't about blood alone. It was about the people who stayed when everything else fell apart. As the years stretched ahead, filled with more plays, more books, more love, I carried the lessons with gratitude. The boy who had been kicked out had become the man who chose mercy on his own terms. And that choice had set us all free. True or false? Should a son always forgive a father who rejected him for being gay, no matter the years of pain?